You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, and this is News with the Eyes of Faith, where I talk about news from the perspective of Christ and from the doctrine of Jesus Christ. Today is our 30th episode spectacular. This is the 30th one I've done, so hip hip hooray. Ideas behind this. Back when I was in college, late 90s, I thought I'd like to do a weekly news and comment radio show. Now, of course, you can tell I really don't have a good radio voice, but that idea sort of stuck there. And then later on, when I was doing the Come Follow Me podcast, I started including news items. And the problem with that is the Come Follow Me podcast, that's what's called evergreen content. It's not timely. It's not a news show. It's stuff that you can use perpetually. It's like an exercise video is an example of evergreen content where you put it up and people just watch it over and over again to do their exercise routines. So mixture of both of those things, and here we are. To begin with, I'd like to quote a revelation. This is given to President John Taylor, and it's an uncanonized revelation. So the source I have is, see, look a little bit scholarly now. You can go to Wikipedia, a list of non-canonical revelations of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they have some from Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, John Taylor, and other presidents of the church that were as much revelations as the other sections of the Doctrine and Covenants. However, for whatever reason, they weren't included. So this is a revelation, and I'll quote this. Behold, Satan sought to take away the free agency of man in the beginning, for which he was thrust out of heaven, and has sought to introduce the same principle upon the earth, which principles are opposed to me, to my institutions and my laws, and to the freedom, the welfare, and the happiness of man, and by which principles of the government of the United States sought to deprive my people of their free agency. And because men have been under the influence and power and dominion of Lucifer, and because tyranny and oppression are evil, and evil have abounded in him, and not by me, saith the Lord your God, shall righteousness and justice and judgment and truth and virtue and holiness be forever trampled underfoot? And the principles of tyranny, oppression, and misrule, and anarchy, deception, and fraud forever prevail? I say unto you, nay. And for this cause have I introduced my church and my kingdom, that pure and righteous principles might be inculcated, and man by his free agency yield a willing obedience to my law. See, there's Council of 50s. Of course, we sustain a separation of church and state, that we don't want the IRS to collect taxes for us. We don't want the federal government to dictate or force us to believe in Trinity or have any loyalty oath or religious test, which actually happened in colonial America. But on the other hand, we certainly have an influence, so that's what the Council of 50 was about. Now, tied to this is Judge Thomas B. Griffith wrote this op-ed. This is from last week in the Deseret News, in its perspective, why it is important to support the federal judiciary as they wrestle with major issues. And before I begin with this, 3 points. One, he was my stake president for about a year. I lived in this stake, and I recommend reading his articles and paying attention to him. He's one of these learned men. He knows what he's talking about. He's a member of the church. He's a convert, if I remember correctly, and served mission in South Africa back when apartheid was in full swing. Now, as I say this, I'm not disagreeing with him, but I'm complimenting him. And this is not other side of the coin. This is not a rebuttal, but another facet on the ruby of the idea. The judge says, amid the flurry of executive orders emanating from the White House in recent weeks, some individuals, organizations, and states have filed legal challenges in the federal courts. And as the judges of those courts have sought to weigh the important legal implication of these challenges, some have granted temporary stays. This is not unusual. It's commonplace for Republican interests to mount legal challenges over the executive orders of Democrats and presidents and vice versa. And that is 100% true. Both sides are doing it. Both sides are issuing these pardons. President Biden did it. President Trump 2.0 did it. The issue is with, of course, thinking about executive orders is that the exterminating order was an executive order. We're bypassing Congress and we're getting a Caesar. That's the issue with the executive orders. Back to the Judge G. It is fair game to criticize the decisions of judges in the public square through the appeals process. In fact, such criticism is hallmark of a healthy democracy. 100% agree with that. What is not fair game, what serves as a body blow to our democratic republic and the rule of law, is to question the good faith of the judges or claim that they are driven by partisan consideration simply because one disagrees with their ruling. So it's okay to question their decisions, but not the good faith of lawyers. And lawyers, they have an oath. It's like the Hippocratic Oath. It's the where they become officers of the court. It's what they do is have to bring honor to the legal system. This lawyer's oath that they take, that you defend your client without collapsing the system. That you have to everyone has a good fair trial, but you don't do tricks that can script the broader process. No, here's the oath that they take. This is from I got this off of the government site. I blank do solemnly swear or affirm that I will administer justice without respect to persons and do equal right to the poor and to the rich. And that's kind of interesting because people say they want to become a judge so they can, for social justice. Like, no, this is actually the law of Moses too, is that you don't play favorites with the poor or rich. You don't let the rich sway you. You don't let the poor, the pity party of the poor sway you. And do equal rights to the poor and the rich. I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all duties incumbent upon me as blank under the Constitution and laws of the United States, so help me God. You need to trust these people that they're doing their best. It's like I said, to use an analogy with a doctor. Okay, doctors aren't omniscient. This isn't like an episode of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, where she can solve the problem in 55 minutes. They're doing the best they can within the limitations, within the structure they're in. Each body is different, that heals differently. So give them that credit. However, I want to add to this discussion is what the Book of Mormon says about lawyers and judges. Alma 10:26, and now behold, I say unto you that the foundation of the destruction of this people is being laid by the unrighteousness of your lawyers and your judges. Alma 10:26, foundation of destruction by the lawyers and judges. 3 Nephi 6. Now there are many of the people who were exceedingly angry because of those who testified of these things, the warrantless executions and killing of the prophets in 3 Nephi 6. And those who were angry were chiefly the chief judges, and they who had been high priests and lawyers, all those who were lawyers who were angry with those who testified of these things. So the high priest, the judges, and the lawyers were caused the collapse of the Nephite Republic, the King Mosiah's system that he set up. And that's the Book of Mormon. Book of Mormon, for some reason, has a lot to say about lawyers, even more so than the Bible. Lawyers and secret combinations. So I'm not making a specific accusation against any particular person, because like the judge said, yeah, it's fair game to criticize these things, but to attack the motives, he says that's not fair game. And it's like, I'll give you a half point on that because you can't discern motives, but just think about human nature. All are under the curse of Adam, the fall of Adam. They're fallible as anyone else. Read that in Federalist Paper 12 about factions, and judges and lawyers aren't immune from being having the passion of faction. If men were angels, they'd need no government. Federalist 51. So the Bible talks about, the scriptures talk about the fall of Adam and human nature. If you don't believe the Bible, do you believe Shakespeare? What Shakespeare has to say about human nature? You got to read what Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud really resonated with Shakespeare. Richard III. Freud thought Shakespeare was spot on. So if you don't believe the Bible, you don't believe the TV show Cops, you don't believe the Book of Mormon, the TV show Cops, just watch an episode. What does the TV show Cops tell you about human nature? The key thing to watch with Cops is how many of the men who are getting arrested aren't wearing shirts. They're walking around without their shirts on. Just watch that. There's a Frenchman named Friedrich Bastiat, and he wrote this pamphlet called The Law. He was an economist. You can find copies of this at FEE, but it's also on the internet. There's a version with a editorial written by Dr. Walter Williams. He was a guest host on Rush Limbaugh's show many times. He was a good friend of Thomas Sowell, so the two black economists who were conservative. Really like this book. It's called Bastiat the Law. And he makes the point, is several points he makes in it, is that leaders are narcissistic snobs. And says Bastiat, to all those persons, the relation between mankind and the legislature appears to be the same as those that exist between clay and potter. So you have the rulers, then you have the hoi polloi, the unwashed masses, and it's the potter, and we're just the lumps of clay. Happily, according to those writers, there are some men termed governors and legislatures upon whom heaven has blessed opposite tendencies, not for their own sake only, but for the sake of the rest of the world. Whilst mankind tends to evil, they incline to good. Whilst mankind is advancing towards darkness, they are aspiring to enlightenment. Whilst mankind is drawn towards vice, they are attracted by virtue. And this granted, they deemed assistance by force, by means of which they are able to substitute their own tendencies for those of the human race. But O sublime writers, deign to remember sometimes that this clay, this sand, this manure, which you are disposing so in arbitrary manner, are men, your equals, intelligent and free beings like yourself, who have received from God as you have the faculty of seeing, of foreseeing, of thinking, and judging of themselves. Men, therefore, are nothing but raw material. It is not for them to will their own improvement. They are not capable of it, according to Saint-Just. It is only the legislature who is. Men are merely to do what he wills that they should be. And that's a lot of the pride that you get in government, and it happens there. You see with the education and wealth that happens with being a judge, of human nature, and as the Book of Mormon talks about. The Book of Mormon lends on this issue with stays of executive orders. Now, it's appropriate. This just happens all the time. My degree's in history. I'm minored in political science, and I've lived long, so this just happens. But there's this attitude that we're the legislature. It's I said so, I'm the mom type of attitude. You're just the unwashed masses, a lump of clay and manure. And it's interesting, if this sounds familiar, if you had read Dostoevsky's book, Crime and Punishment, the hero Raskolnikov makes the same point. Is you have certain people who operate by different standards of morality. The legislature are above everything. They're the anointed, to use Thomas Sowell's expression in his book, Vision of the Anointed, and I highly recommend that book, Thomas Sowell, Vision of the Anointed. And you have the benighted, the hoi polloi, the lower class, manure, to use Bastiat's term. And so in Crime and Punishment, since Raskolnikov's part of this elite class, he kills someone, and he thinks that he's morally justified in getting away with it, as opposed to the rule of law, where everyone plays by one standard, like that oath I read. You administer play by the same rules if you're rich or poor. It's the human predicament. We're all fallen. And the question is, how do we manage fallenness? And I want you to think about this as when you read the Federalist Papers, they took human nature into consideration when they're setting up the country. And as far as I know, this is the only country that was rationally and coolly set up that took the fall of Adam into account. C.S. Lewis said this: I'm a Democrat, and that's a small d. He's a supporter of democracy, not a member of the Democratic Party. I'm a Democrat because I believe in the fall of man. I think most people are Democrats for the opposite reason. A great deal of democratic enthusiasm descends from the idea of people like Rousseau, who believed that in democracy because he thought mankind was so wise and good that everyone deserved a share in the government. That's distributive justice. Everyone gets their turn on the slide. The danger of defending democracy on those grounds is that they're not true. Whenever their weakness is exposed, the people who prefer tyranny make capital out of that exposure. The real reason for democracy is just the reverse. Mankind is so fallen that no man can be trusted with unchecked power over his fellows. Aristotle said that some people were only fit to be slaves. I do not contradict him, but I reject slavery because I see no men fit to be masters. Now, what C.S. Lewis is doing is, one, he's incorporating Christian theology into this discussion of politics. And like I said, in America, the First Amendment, some people get gun-shy about that. But no, this is a philosophical debate, not a legal debate. But what does the fall of Adam mean for government, for politics? So attacking the good faith of these judges, but you have to understand they're also under the fall of Adam. They're just fallen like everyone else, and they can make mistakes, and they have partisan passions, and they're not immune from that. So I like I said, I'm not making a specific accusation. I'm just talking in general philosophic terms. So keep all that in mind when you discuss this. You go to this politics, you think everyone's human nature is good, and you're going to behave a certain way. If you think everyone's bad, you're going to behave another way. Doge. Federal employees told to justify a job's an email or must as a face dismissal. Everyone has to do that. You have to account for what you're doing at work. Once again, the double standard. Well, your politics, you can sit in the office all day. You don't have to do any accounting. No, that's what he's doing. Everyone has to do it, and that's how you cut the fat off. Picture an emaciated sow with 10,000 piglets trying to suckle her. That's not me. That's an image from Rush Limbaugh in his book, The Way Things Ought to Be. It's also as Doge. A lot of states are setting up similar Doge programs where they're eliminating government waste. This is back with Clinton era, reinventing government. And Elon Musk on X posted Bill Clinton, firing a bunch of people, part of the reinventing government, and no one said a peep. But when Trump does it, it's an existential crisis, extinction level event. So it's interesting on this list from Newsweek, they had all these different states, but I noticed two were missing. One is Utah, the other one is California. Well, they don't do one in Utah because they don't need it, and they don't one in California because they're in denial. Can you smell the smoke from that fire? All those forest fires in California? Yeah, denial. News from about religion. This is news with the eyes of faith. After decades of change, the U.S. religion landscape is stabilized. And so this is the same news we heard. I mean, that the older people remain faithful, the younger people are unaffiliated. I saw this when I was in Russia, in St. Petersburg, the round cathedrals where you have a small group of old women there. Why is this going on? Well, we've achieved a critical mass with this false normalcy. There's a book called The Last Christian on Earth, and it talks about this, how you manipulate things. And one of the things you do is you create a false normalcy. It looks like Christianity has been debunked, so people start thinking it is. Even though it isn't really. It's an idea out there, and you just keep this falsehood in place. Confuseocracy in the religious sector. Social media, getting ideas across. And you have the new atheists in the United Kingdom, the Four Horsemen, tied with scientism. You have the religious failures and extremism, the scandals with the youth in the Catholic Church and Boy Scout, 9/11. You have this other thing is the commandments. And people, if you're on the left, you like the autonomy and individualism, this freedom. And so you have commandments, and people don't like it crimping their style. They want to be in control, and they just don't want to be submissive as Christ was. I think it's interesting with the younger generation not going to church because they talk so much about community. But why aren't you attending church? And it goes back to this point of feelings, fairness, and friends. By fairness, by feelings, it's like egalitarianism. You want to treat everyone fairly, and you don't have a clergy. That's sort of what Martin Luther did. Is he said that there is a priesthood of all believers, which we as members of the church don't believe. But this idea that everyone's sort of on the same standing. And then he wrote a book called Christian Liberty, or The Freedom of a Christian. And so you have the autonomy aspect of it. But and there's a way to interpret Christianity that way. And I'm surprised that at least Protestants are gravitating it when you go back to Luther. But yeah, it's the autonomy aspect and the egalitarianism. And this, you base things, if you believe in autonomy and community, those two things are irreconcilable. So there's just an inherent structural flaw with people on the left. You cannot be autonomous and have community. And so you create these small nodes of where support, a peer gallery, a support group, or an enabling group to keep you going, but you just can't do it large scale. So that's that. New book on Joe Biden exposes massive cover-up of declining health. Yeah, so we saw it all, but we got shadow banned. So the book's called Original Sin by Alex Thompson from Axios, and CNN's Jake Tapper. Large act of public deception that has had few precedents, the publisher says. Large act of public deception. We all saw it. We got shadow banned when we brought it up. You remember that. It's this amnesia that's going on. The cult of novelty is that we just can't remember things anymore. I talk about getting a degree in political science and law degree, or you're getting a degree in history where you can remember that. All this book says is, in the Twitter files, so that every conspiracy theory we thought is actually true. You remember those FBI documents at Donald Trump's bathroom? People thought they had the nuclear secrets on. They were selling it. They just started imagining things. Well, those are loaded back on Air Force One. They're back in Florida. Now, pay attention to the coverage. It was a nothing burger. It was fake stuff to attack Trump, legal prosecution, legal persecution, lawfare. Now, CNN reported the headline, quote, Trump takes seized boxes back to Florida. NBC reported this, FBI returns records from Mar-a-Lago church. Now, did you notice the slanted language? Pay attention to that. This is more of a philosophical and persuasion question. How they're slanting the language. The seized boxes. Well, it's actually correct, but he's the president, so he can handle this however he wants. There's no really procedure for declassifying stuff. He's the president, so he took it back. Of course, when he's out of office, this is going to repeat. But you notice how CNN and NBC are slanting the language. FBI returns records. Trump takes seized boxes. There's a definite slant there, and that's where the gift of discernment comes in. You can detect slanting. So the big news, the battle royale between Trump and Zelensky. And someone was commenting on how you spell Zelensky's last name. It's in Cyrillic, so it's a different thing. So yeah, the clip, I have a link to the clip on X. You saw it, and you understand. Well, first of all, 7 habits of highly effective people. Where's that diagram? Where is that diagram? So here's the diagram, and you have this one. Habit 5: seek to understand. And then be understood. So you have think win-win, seek to understand and be understood, and then synergize. And use that frame when you're analyzing that. Is this a win-win or no deal? Or are they synergizing? And all I got to say, you're going to have to take a realistic approach on this. It's going to be painful for Ukraine unless you want to risk a war with Russia. World War. We keep calling everything World War III, but that's what's going on. So I like to read something from the Book of Mormon, and I think Ukraine just has to eat the land lost in order to stop the war, stop people from dying. He's just going to have to eat with Crimea and then the lost provinces. And this is what the Book of Mormon says. This is from Helaman chapter 4 with Moronihah. And it came to pass in the 62nd year of the reign of the judges that Moronihah could obtain no more possession over the Lamanites. Therefore, they did abandon their design to obtain the remainder of their lands. For so numerous were the Lamanites, it became impossible for the Nephites to obtain more power over them. Therefore, Moronihah did employ all of his armies maintaining those parts which he had taken. And it came to pass that because of the greatness of the number of the Lamanites, the Nephites were in great fear, lest they should be overpowered and trodden down and slain and destroyed. So that's in Helaman chapter 4. That's my suggestion. Turn to the Book of Mormon and just eat the lost, stop the war. If you're familiar with the history of Europe, there's no set boundaries or borders. In fact, you can see some YouTube videos on it where the borders shift, Poland disappears. You get this country called Prussia, appears out of nowhere, then it disappears. Prussia and Poland. To stop the war, just eat the loss. And you understand why President Zelensky was agitated as he was, but that's what's going to solve the problem, is just eat the land loss like Captain Moronihah did. Ramaswamy, he's Ohio, running for governor of Ohio. That's why he's disappeared off of Doge. I don't endorse him. It should be good. You remember Bobby Jindal of Louisiana? It's sad he kind of disappeared, but Well, that you go from governor to presidency. Um, Reagan, Clinton, Jimmy Carter, people going from Congress to the presidency, such as Obama and Biden, well, they speak for themselves. Kathleen Kennedy out at Lucasfilm, or is she? I keep hearing conflicting reports. People said she was. It's interesting. She was one of the dancers at the beginning of Temple of Doom. You can find pictures of her. But this is my take. She took it over, and she was hardcore DEI. Under her watch, we got this slogan, "The Force is female." In other words, alienating me. Fan from 1977. Yeah, I'm that old. I saw Star Wars at a drive-in theater as a kid. That's how old I am. And what she did is, in the case of Star Wars, the legacy males were just deadbeat dads. Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Indiana Jones. They replaced the legacy white male character with a svelte British brunette. This is sort of a bait and switch. The same thing, too, with Doctor Strange, where it was taken over by the character America, the dimension-hopping girl. And since she was LGBTQ, you let her get away with it. And once again, the market spoke. That's why I say use the free market. And another thing, so I don't know if she is or out. I do own stock in Disney, and I voted accordingly at the last vote. And that's when we do it. You vote at the box office, you own stock, and you vote at the vote you get. Free market. Remember, Star Wars, for me, as a kid, we didn't have Star Wars as a kid. It was Star Trek and Planet of the Apes, and then reruns of Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. The serials, not the TV shows. But remember, George Lucas did Star Wars because he could not get the rights to Flash Gordon. Brandon Sanderson didn't always exist. Orson Scott Card didn't always exist. During my life, you had Stargate SG-1. You had Farscape. Dune was before I was born. But yeah, the field's open to you because people are turning away from Star Wars and Star Trek, and there's a hunger for it. The Expanse, that's something that's new. You can just turn to that, and if you're a writer, you have the inclination, go ahead, because I don't know what's going to happen. If you remember, work Book of Mormon themes and doctrines into it. Book of Mormon musical, not that one. It's called Christ in the Americas, and it's written from a faithful point of view. So let's see where that goes. Another entertainment news, revival of Jesus Christ Superstar. Cynthia Erivo, I don't know how you pronounce her name. I looked on Wikipedia. I think she has like 19 different names. And she's famous for playing Ethelba, the Wicked Witch of the West, in Wicked, and she's been cast as Jesus Christ. Now, it's interesting, the 1970-1971 film had a Black Judas, Carl Anderson. So once again, free market, just don't coerce them. Let the market take care of itself. The market's not perfect, but it's better than what they had in the Soviet Union. So if you like it, go see it. If you don't, then don't go see it. I think this is a bit passé. It's back in 1988, they did The Last Temptation of Christ, where they had a Christ fantasize about being married. So casting a female, then they could get through with that with Doctor Who, the female Doctor Who, and then they had the black gay Doctor Who. It's already been done, so it's not radical. It's someone whose frame is stuck in the past. They think they're speaking truth to power. It's kind of like the guy in the ward who says, "Hey, we're commercializing Christmas." Yeah, we know that already, so let's move on. What you may not know is the First Presidency issued a statement against Jesus Christ Superstar. So you can read it in the Teachings of Harold B. Lee. That's not the manual, but this is the thick book published by Deseret Book. It's from the Deseret News, 9th of October, 1971, page A1. So this is page A1. And this is what the First Presidency said about Jesus Christ Superstar. We feel it is our responsibility to warn our people against the present-day wave of musical performances which are aimed at the destruction of sacred principles, which form the very foundation upon which we stand. One of these is the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar. We consider this musical a profane and sacrilegious attack upon true Christianity. It strips Jesus Christ of his divine attributes. Its prevailing theme presents the falsehood that our Lord, and this is quoting from a statement of one of the characters, is just a man, the same as anyone I know, and picturing him absolutely as consorting as well as other men with women of questionable repute. Now, certainly he did that. Christ talked to everyone, so that's questionable criticism. To the dismay of those who worship him as the Savior of mankind, as the divine Son of God, he is an apostle portrayed in earthly roles, living below Christian standards. We encourage members of the church and good men everywhere to oppose this kind of entertainment. Yeah, you see people get caught up in the emotion. If you have a good soundtrack, you can teach false doctrine, but if it has a good beat to it, you'll ignore it. So, yeah, I saw the movie about 10 years ago. I remember seeing it on TV as a kid. I didn't like the beginning. It's that sort of the Partridge Family bus going up to Calvary. So I just didn't watch it, and so I just sat down just to see what it was about. And yeah, go back, watch a rerun of Gomer Pyle. Last of the entertainment news, Gene Hackman's unusual death. That was a bit shocking. It's like when William Shatner's wife died at the swimming pool. Weird Al Yankovic's parents died. Dr. Laura's mother was estranged from her daughter and died alone. I just wanted to say this about Gene Hackman. He's had an interesting career, and we all knew him. Hoosiers, that's a good feel-good movie. If you're feeling depressed, watch Hoosiers. That's a nice sports feel-good movie. For me, Gene Hackman, the first role I saw him in is in 1978's Superman movie with Christopher Reeve. And let me talk a little bit about Superman. This is the great Superman book. There's Superman there. I remember my parents saw the movie, and then my dad liked it so much he took me, just sort of a father-son outing, to see the movie again. And it had that beginning where you have the fake curtains and the black and white sequence. In middle school, we played the soundtrack or the Superman march. John Lucas was just killing everything, Star Wars and Superman. Later, the local UHF, Channel 44, replayed the George Reeves Supermans, and that's my introduction rather than the comic books, just from the TV. And I'm still passionate about George Reeves. He was perfect, and I think he did a good job with it. And I'm familiar with the questions about his death. He had a sense of heroism. Later, you have Dean Cain, of course, playing Superman. I want to talk about a little bit about the actors: Dean Cain, Kevin Sorbo, who played Hercules, and you have Arnold. And these are men playing strong, physically strong men, but the roles they play, the heroic ones, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator, and then Red Heat, their heroic roles show men channeling their strength and their energy, sublimating their strength and testosterone to constructive purposes. That's what Hercules' labors are about. Dean Cain as Superman. And so if you want to get men following Superman, sort of the golden age Superman, and these types of characters just teach men to use their strength for constructive purposes. And what's happened now, it's no longer truth, justice, and the American way. One comics, Superman was no longer an American. They had his son was LGBTQ for a few months. I think a lot of that happened during the riotous years of DEI. But once again, it's a free market. If you like this stuff, buy it. If you're like me, you like the old school Superman, okay, I'll stick with this. I'll buy this used book. But you think about what's going on with Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and then with Superman, how they're it becomes a bit of a poison pill, a sugar-coated pill, where you have the legacy memories, but inside, it's some sort of tapeworm or something that you're swallowing, a poison pill, a sugar-coated poison pill. And hopefully with DCU, the new DCU reboot, that you can get back to solid storytelling with a heroic Superman. And like I said, if you need an LGBTQ character or what have you, free market, free market, free market. So we were at 33. I went a little bit long, and that's news with the eyes of faith.